Something just happened in Washington that they did not want you to see. And I'm going to break down every single second of it, because if you blink, you miss how this actually works. Stay with me. This one matters. A Senate hearing room, morning session. The agenda looked boring on paper, an oversight review of FBI document classification protocols. The kind of thing that gets zero views, zero coverage, zero attention. That was the point. Most people scroll past hearings like this without a second thought. But Senator Sheldon Whitehouse didn't call this session by accident. He spent 11 months building toward this exact moment. 11 months of subpoenas, court fights, and document tracing, all leading to one room, one table, one morning. Cash Patel walked in at 9:47 a.m., two attorneys at his side, shoulders back, calm face, the walk of a man who thinks he's already won. He adjusted the mic, nodded at the chairman, and sat down like this was going to be easy. He'd done this 100 times, and today was no different. For the first 45 minutes, it wasn't. Classification timelines, retention schedules, reporting structures, bureaucratic back and forth. Patel answered everything smoothly. Just enough detail to sound serious, just vague enough to commit to nothing. He was running out the clock, and he was good at it. Then Whitehouse picked up the microphone, and the whole room changed. I don't care how many hearings you've watched, you can feel when a moment shifts. The air gets heavy. People stop shuffling papers. The chatter dies. Whitehouse didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He reached into his folder, pulled out a single document, and placed it face down on the table. That's it. One document, face down. And every single person in that room knew something was coming. Director Patel, Whitehouse said, completely calm, I want to discuss one specific document. Are you familiar with FBI internal correspondence designated reference number EC209PB47? Patel didn't blink. I'm familiar with a large volume of internal correspondence. Senator, you'll need to be more specific. Whitehouse nodded. Slow, deliberate. I'm about to be. He flipped the document over. What Whitehouse had in his hands wasn't something he found last week. This was the result of 11 months of legal fights, 3 separate court challenges, specifically to track which Epstein-related documents had their classification changed after Patel took over the FBI. This document, Whitehouse continued, is an FBI internal communication from the Palm Beach field office to headquarters, dated November 14th, 2019. Subject line, follow-up classification review, Epstein matter, individuals of interest. The room went dead quiet. Then Whitehouse dropped the detail that stopped everything cold. That document? It used to carry a standard confidential label. Routine, low level, the kind of classification that sits in a file for years and nobody touches. Then on February 3rd of this year, just 17 days after Cash Patel was confirmed as FBI director, it was reclassified, upgraded all the way to top secret special access required. 17 days. Not a year later. Not after some new national security threat. 17 days into the job. And here's what you need to understand. That kind of upgrade doesn't happen on its own. It's not automatic. It requires a deliberate decision, a specific authorization. Someone has to sign off. Whitehouse's team traced the chain. The reclassification didn't come from the Classification Review Board. It didn't come from the National Security Division. It came from the director's office. Cash Patel's office. In your first 17 days running the FBI, Whitehouse asked, still completely calm, why did you make it a priority to reclassify a document naming individuals connected to Jeffrey Epstein? Patel paused, controlled, but you could see it. Reclassification decisions are made based on ongoing law enforcement sensitivities and national security considerations that I'm not able to discuss in open session. Smooth, practiced. A wall built from carefully chosen words. Whitehouse nodded like he expected every syllable of that answer. Then he reached back into the folder, and this is where everything escalates, because the next document he pulled out wasn't classified at all. No top secret stamp, no restricted label, no walls, no barriers, nothing. It was already public record, already sitting in a federal court file. Anyone could pull it. This, Whitehouse said, holding it up for the cameras, is a sworn deposition entered into federal court record in the Southern District of Florida in 2020. Not a rumor, not a leak, not some anonymous tip. A sworn deposition. The document came from a former employee at Epstein's Palm Beach residence, a woman who worked there for 3 years. Whitehouse found the marked page, adjusted his glasses, and read directly from the transcript. Quote, I personally observed Mr. Epstein entertaining guests on at least 40 separate occasions. On a minimum of 12 of those occasions, the guests included young women who appeared to me to be under the age of 18. I observed these guests being introduced to Mr. Epstein's associates. He paused. Then he read the next line. Among the associates I recognized, and he said the name, Donald Trump. Now, I need you to understand what the room did next, because it didn't explode. Nobody shouted. Nobody gasped. What happened was something much heavier than that. Total, complete silence. Because this wasn't a tweet. This wasn't a podcast clip. This wasn't some anonymous forum post. This was a senator reading sworn federal court testimony out loud, on the record, inside a United States Senate hearing room. That's a different thing entirely. And everyone in that room knew it. Whitehouse didn't editorialize. He didn't add commentary. He didn't point fingers. He finished the paragraph, set the page down, and looked straight at Patel. Director Patel, this deposition was in FBI custody as of 2020. It was part of the same investigative record that contained document EC-209 PB-47. The document you reclassified 17 days into your tenure. That connection right there, that's the entire point. He wasn't arguing about what the deposition means. He was building a chain. Public deposition inside investigative record. Investigative record contains a specific document. That document gets reclassified to top secret. 17 days after Patel takes over. Then came the question, when you authorized the reclassification of that document, were you aware that the investigative record it belonged to included sworn testimony placing Donald Trump at Epstein's residence? Not an accusation, not a claim of guilt. Just, did you know? Yes or no? And time slowed down. Patel's hand stayed flat on the table. His face stayed still. His attorneys looked over but said nothing. No notes passed, no whispers, just silence. I counted. 17 seconds before he answered. In a Senate hearing room, 17 seconds is an eternity. When Patel finally spoke, his voice was lower than it had been all morning. Director's office memoranda are part of an internal deliberative process, Senator. I'm not in a position to discuss deliberative process communications in this setting. Not yes, not no. A legal wall, dressed up in bureaucratic language. And I want you to drop a comment right now, because I genuinely want to know, does that answer sound like someone with nothing to hide? Tell me what you're thinking, because the people watching this live are asking the same question. Whitehouse didn't flinch. He didn't push back emotionally. He went right back into the folder, because he still wasn't done. He pulled out one more sheet of paper. This, he said, holding it up for the cameras, is an FBI Director's Office action memorandum recovered through a court-ordered FOIA disclosure last week. The date on the header, February 1st of this year, 2 days before that Epstein document got reclassified to top secret. Whitehouse read from it directly. Quote, given the potential sensitivity of named individuals in the Epstein investigative record and the current political environment, it is recommended that all documents containing references to current or former senior government officials or their close associates be reviewed for upgraded classification. This review should be completed on an expedited basis. Priority should be given to documents containing references to the current administration's principal officers and their pre-office associations. End quote. He put the page down slowly. No drama, no commentary, just the facts laid out in a straight line. February 1st, Patel's office memo says, fast-track the classification upgrade for Epstein documents that name senior officials. February 3rd, EC-209 PB-47 gets upgraded to top secret special access required. Director Patel, Whitehouse said, this memorandum is stamped with your office's routing number. He didn't say it proved guilt. He didn't claim it was a smoking gun. He asked one clean question. Did this memorandum cross your desk before the February 3rd reclassification decision? Another pause. Director's office memoranda reflect internal deliberative recommendations. The existence of a routing number does not necessarily indicate direct personal review. Careful. Calculated. Every word chosen to avoid a direct answer. Whitehouse pressed. Calmly. So you are not disputing that your office initiated an expedited review of Epstein-related documents referencing senior government officials 2 days before this specific document was upgraded? Senator, classification determinations involve multiple levels of review. I cannot discuss the internal flow of documents in open session. Not a yes, not a no. Again, Whitehouse didn't raise his voice. He leaned forward and laid it all out, flat, clear, and impossible to dodge. Let's establish what we know. 1. A memorandum from your office recommended fast-tracking upgraded classification for Epstein documents that reference senior officials. 2 days later, a document inside that same Epstein investigative record was upgraded to top secret special access required. 3, that record included sworn testimony naming senior public figures. He paused. This committee has spent 11 months trying to understand why Epstein documents that were moving toward release suddenly got locked down instead. Today, we have a timeline, not an accusation, a timeline. And that right there is the shift people need to understand. Because once a timeline is placed on the record in a Senate hearing, it doesn't go away. It lives in congressional history. White House wasn't trying to win the news cycle. He was building a documented record, and in Washington, a documented record is a loaded weapon. The question was no longer whether the FBI had sensitive files. The question was why those files got buried the moment a new director sat down. Then White House went even further. Director Patel, is EC 209 PB 47 the only Epstein-related document that got an upgraded classification in your first month? Patel hedged, said he'd need to see the specific documents. White House pulled out a printed log. This classification status change list was obtained through a FOIA request and appeal. It shows 38 Epstein-related documents reclassified upward between January 20th and March 1st of this year. 38. Not one, not two. 38 documents locked down in the first 6 weeks of Patel's tenure. Of those 38, 27 contain references to individuals who have served in federal office, advised federal administrations, or held significant federal appointments. Patel held his ground. Classification decisions are based on potential harm from disclosure, not on who is mentioned. White House came right back and helped us understand the harm. These documents sat at lower classification levels for years. Some went through public records review under prior leadership. What changed in the last 6 weeks that suddenly made 38 of them top secret? Evolving law enforcement sensitivities and national security equities can change over time. Did any specific new development occur between January 20th and February 3rd that changed the sensitivity of these documents? I cannot discuss investigative specifics in open session. Same wall, different words. White House kept going. He noted that the FBI's own internal review board had recommended releasing several categories of Epstein materials last year because national security concerns weren't present. He asked directly whether the February reclassifications were consistent with that guidance. Patel's answer: classification guidance is advisory. Final determinations rest with agency leadership, and White House stopped right there. He didn't let that line slide past. So final determinations rest with you. Silence. Yes, Senator. First direct answer of the entire hearing. Not about awareness, not about motive, about authority. Cash Patel just confirmed on the record in front of the cameras inside a United States Senate hearing room that the final call on those 38 reclassifications was his. White House gathered his papers. For 11 months, this committee has tried to understand why Epstein-related records that were moving toward public release got locked in the opposite direction. Today, we have established that 38 documents were reclassified upward within weeks of your confirmation. We have established that your office issued a memo recommending fast-tracked upgrades for documents naming senior officials. And we've established that final classification authority rests with you. No outburst, no fireworks, just facts, stacked in a row. On the record, the silence in that chamber wasn't shock. It was the weight of something being documented in real time. Because oversight doesn't always look like a bombshell moment. Sometimes it looks exactly like this: quiet, methodical, and absolutely devastating. White House had one final question. Director Patel, will you provide this committee, in closed session if necessary, a detailed written justification for each of the 38 Epstein-related documents reclassified in your first month, including the specific harm assessments that required their elevation? Clean, procedural, no way to dodge it without looking like you're hiding something. Patel shifted in his seat. We are always willing to work with a committee consistent with applicable law and classification constraints. I'm asking specifically, will you commit to providing written harm assessments for those reclassifications? Pause. We will review the request and respond appropriately. Not yes, not no. A review. White House looked up. Let the record reflect that the director has not committed at this time to providing individualized harm assessments for those reclassifications. And then he set his pen down. For 11 months, this committee has sought clarity on why Epstein-related classification levels moved in the direction they did. Today, we established a timeline. We established authority. What remains to be established is justification, and that is where oversight continues. Cash Patel walked into that room thinking this was a routine hearing he could outlast. He left with his name attached to a documented timeline that is now permanently embedded in the congressional record. No shredder can touch it. No press cycle can bury it. It lives in the record. Whether this leads to an inspector general investigation, more hearings, or something bigger we don't know yet, But here's what we do know. 38 Epstein documents were reclassified under his watch. His office issued the memo that started it. He confirmed the authority was his, and he refused to explain why. That's not a theory. That's not spin. That's what happened on the record today. If you've been following this story and you're tired of watching powerful people dodge accountability while the rest of us get nothing but deflection and legal walls, share this video right now. Don't let the algorithm bury it, because the people who need to see this are exactly the ones who won't find it on their own. Hit share. Make some noise. That's how this actually gets out.